Today we'll be talking about Chapter 16, Section 2. Very short section, but we're going to briefly discuss expanding of public education because we are involved in the process of learning, and this is at the expense of the taxpayer, and the state has graciously decided to provide us with this opportunity to receive an education. But of course, as we've learned, this is an opportunity that was not previously available to many people. And I think it's an awesome opportunity that we have. Sometimes we don't always realize opportunities that we were born into. And so hopefully as we learn about the rise of public education and how it contributed to national literacy, which is an amazing phenomenon that almost all Americans can read or write. First off, after the Civil War, many states began to pass laws requiring schools to provide services for all children, but also requiring children to attend schools. Now, previously, this only meant elementary school. In fact, really until the mid-20th century, for most people, that only meant elementary school. Kindergarten was a German concept around the development of children to prepare them for elementary school. It became very popular. But around the 1880s, here's what we have. Most children attending school were white. In fact, about 62% of children attending elementary school were white. Really only about 1 out of every 3 African American children were able to attend school. And these were segregated schools. High school, meanwhile, of course what we're involved in, was still considered a luxury. And public high schools were still very rare. Usually they were called preparatory schools because they were designed to prepare young people for entrance into college. And they were designed primarily around academics, exclusively focused on college prep. And so you would take classes like history, math, literature. Again, classes focused on helping you acquire those academic skills. However, by 1900, while only 500,000 students nationwide were attending high schools, our industrial economy began to demand students with not only academic skills, but also technical or managerial skills. Skills that may not require a college education, but would require some type of post-elementary instruction. And high schools began to expand in what they offered to accommodate for the needs of industry. And so we began to see technical schools arise, community colleges arise, but also career and technical education opportunities within high schools. For example, the new school that we're hoping to see next year will offer you the opportunity to take classes that you don't previously have available to you. So if you're wanting to acquire skills in mechatronics, shop, construction, cosmetology, a lot of practical, hands-on certification programs, those will become available to you, and those do fit a need within our community. Now, I mentioned race earlier. In high schools, even, a very small percentage of black teenagers were able to attend high school. There were some schools, post-elementary for African Americans. Perhaps the most famous of these was the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute in Alabama, founded by Booker T. Washington, that we're studying over the next couple of weeks. Most African American students attended private schools that had no public support. These would either be funded from within their community or they would have to pay tuition. For example, the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute was a private university funded through grants, and endowments from the black community, but it was not tax supported, not for a very long time. Immigrants, meanwhile, immigrants were encouraged to attend school as part of the process of becoming Americanized, as part of the process of acquiring the English language and learning about American culture. Immigrant communities do typically hang on to aspects of their native cultures. Many first-generation immigrants continue to speak their native language and teach their children their native language along with the English language. It's why so many of you are dual speakers, because you have learned your native heritage and language from your families, but you've also learned the English language from attending school and just your local interactions. At this time, it was commonplace for public schools to have readings from the Protestant Bible, though Catholics attended their own Catholic schools, which would have readings from the Bible as well as readings from church teachings. Adults had opportunities to attend night school. Again, there were community colleges. There were some day programs for education for adults. But again, community college was kind of a new phenomenon at this time. University. Very few people had the opportunity to attend university at this time. In fact, maybe as few as 2% of young people had attended college. And so what we've seen as we've progressed as a society is that more people have had that opportunity. In fact, even through the early 1900s, college enrollment quadrupled. Universities have grown in the programs they offer and the services they offer, the curricula that they can offer. Universities have also grown to become centers of research. Duke University, one of the research universities in North Carolina, is still leading the fields in many different sciences. Professional law schools and medical schools have become established in the United States, and many of these universities are very exclusive, especially at this time in terms of having entrance exams. Some would require a high school diploma, yet high schools were very rare at this time, and so many would just have very competitive entrance exams. And so you could prepare for those exams by having your family hire a private tutor or by sending your children to these preparatory schools, which have evolved into high schools. But again, most high schools at this time were privately funded, and so the opportunity that you have just didn't exist at this time. But now a little about Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. The question that you are thinking about in your essay and learning about in your research is, how can racism be addressed in a society? How can we overcome racism? Booker T. Washington believed that education was one of the greatest ways to overcome racism in a society. And he realized that not enough black college graduates were getting degrees, that not enough young black Americans were getting educations. Washington believed that racism would eventually end as the black community became more educated and more equipped to enter the workforce and become leaders in their society. And he followed through on this vision by founding the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute. It's now a university, primarily African American. And it was founded originally as a teaching college. Normal Institute means teaching college. But it also had industrial-based curricula to teach people to be managers and leaders in their fields. It was designed to help African Americans acquire useful job skills and become leaders in their community, because Washington believed that was the best way to overcome racism. Now, W.E.B. Du Bois had a different vision, however. Now, Du Bois also believed in education very strongly. In fact, he was the very first African American to receive a doctorate degree from Harvard University, a very exclusive university with a very competitive entrance exam. Not that many people got into this university. And so Du Bois made history by being the first black person to not only attend Harvard, but receive a doctorate from there. He founded a movement called the Niagara Movement to encourage African Americans to study the liberal arts. He also believed that well-educated leaders would be needed in the black community. But where the two differed, Washington believed, essentially, that blacks should keep their heads down and should smile and accept racism as a reality, but seek to earn the approval of the white man. Du Bois strongly disagreed, though he had a respect for Washington. Du Bois believed that blacks deserved the respect as citizens, and that racism was an affront on the equality that had been promised. And Du Bois believed that blacks needed to protest and perhaps even disobey laws peacefully to challenge racism, because he believed racism was shameful and that it could be overcome by forcing whites to confront the reality of their own hatred. And so Du Bois went on to found the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In 1908, he founded the NAACP. So again, what you are thinking about in your essay is how to overcome racism. We all agree that's a problem. We can all understand that racism is still a problem. Washington's idea was that people should keep their head down, should not stand up for themselves, but should slowly earn the approval of a racist world. And so his goal was realized in the founding of a school. Du Bois, however, again, had this vision for overcoming racism. And really it's become the movement that is the NAACP, that we should fight peacefully, and that we should protest, and that we should break laws peacefully to overcome racism. And so again, as you're doing your research and you're thinking about this, it is a very important question, because we all realize how troublesome racism is in our nation. And the election, sadly, has highlighted so much of this hatred. Yet, how do we overcome it? These are two fundamental ideas. Which would you choose? And that's what your essay is about.